Hello guys, I am here to go over your very last assignment before the summative assessment that you have going on. So this last one is going to introduce the purpose of education as it has been viewed basically in American society, perhaps adapted and perhaps some aspects of it remain the same. So as we will go through this, I hope that these questions will become easier for you to answer on your own. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to email or Google Voice text me. So here we go. Huh. Paragraph 1. Thomas Jefferson, widely considered the most adamant supporter of public education among our country's founders, proposed a two-track school system that would separate the laboring and the learned. He went on to explain how this system would operate by raking a few geniuses from the rubbish, making it nearly impossible for those in the laboring track to access the opportunities, power, and wealth that are often tied to educational attainment. Okay, so that's quite an introduction. It's trying to cover basically the historical context of how education was valued in our society. So what is it that is meant when they're referring to laboring? It's basically talking about, if you will, the kind of grunt work that is done in society, just basic physical toil labor, basically working with more of your body, if you will. Um, Blue collar versus white collar type of work. What is the meaning of learned as it's used in the text? Well, in this context, they're talking more about people that are scholars, people that tend to be educated and have jobs that require the use of their intellect. So, when paraphrasing the statement, raking a few geniuses from the rubbish, what we're really trying to get at in this concept is the idea that he's just trying to take certain people that are, if you will, already inherently considered to be smart from those that don't seem to show that potential. So picking a few smart people from the trash, so to speak. All right, now let's move on to slide 3. Contrary to what many believe, the Constitution of the United States does not explicitly guarantee the right to a quality education. Challengers to the quality of education have had to utilize the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to work towards educational equity. This has left Jefferson's two tracks largely in place. In 2009, a study of urban and suburban school districts showed that the high school graduation rate in urban schools was 60.9% compared to 75.3% in suburban schools. A 2014 report from the Annie E. Casey Foundation found that 75% of low-income students are reading below grade level. And because of how systems stratify society, these results are compounded by race. For example, black men born into wealthy families are predicted to end up poorer than white men born into poor families. So there is quite a distinction here that they're drawing from people of color as well as people that tend to come from wealthy families and how that seems to compound based on those identities. All right. Why does the author mention the Constitution of the United States? Well, the author here is trying to make an explicit point that quality of education is not guaranteed to all people as a general right. So there is nothing that is inherently protecting people from achieving the kind of educational goals or quality of education that they'll need to, say, achieve basic goals in life and success. So, in other words, where you come from and how you were raised can dictate a lot more in terms of the kind of education you receive than just the fact that you happen to be an American citizen. Okay, so what does the phrase educational equity refer to? Well, it's referring to oppressed groups getting the education they need to gain equality. So, in other words, in this kind of context that we have going on right now, there isn't any sort of equality in education due to all sorts of distinctions that are related to, as well, income and race and other identifying factors. And the idea that there should be some sort of educational equity is this notion that those factors should not in any sense influence the kind of educational quality or quality of education that you receive. So, what does the phrase stratified society refer to? Well, stratified in some sense refers to as a separation of certain levels or layers or classes in this case, where you have certain people that can achieve certain social statuses, if you will, through education, and some that simply cannot achieve that due to limited access to certain higher quality education that will, say, prepare them for college or certain careers, versus those that will perhaps prepare their students for jobs that are more low skill. Okay. Let's see. Going on to slide 4. The failure to truly educate all people has resulted in schools becoming sites of social reproduction. The wealthy and powerful send their children to schools with other wealthy and powerful children. They are taught the skills and norms necessary to maintain their status, power, and wealth. Meanwhile, the education of the working class and poor go to schools with other working class and poor families. They are taught a curriculum that represents the story of the wealthy and powerful. They go to schools that set the lowest possible expectations and have police patrol in their hallways. It is clear Jefferson's tracks are alive and well. So that kind of wraps up the article aspect of this assignment. What does the phrase social reproduction refer to? Basically, what they're referring to here is duplicating the same sort of social statuses as being outcomes for certain people, depending on whether they come from a wealthy background or a poor background. Your education is kind of aligned as to whether or not you will basically, if you will, reproduce that certain expectation. And that is something that tends to be supported by our education system. So basically, as it is detailed, wealthy parents seem to take their kids to wealthy schools, give them additional resources if needed to help them attain certain educational goals, whereas those kind of additional resources and that kind of rigorous educational expectation isn't really offered to schools that are from poorer communities. Okay, so what does the phrase Jefferson's tracks refer to? Well, Jefferson's idea of having a learned and a labor track in this context is what we're looking at. Remember when he tried to talk about picking certain geniuses from the rubbish, sorry. That's what it's kind of referring to. He's picking certain people that he feels would have been, if you will, innately capable of certain intellectual abilities versus those that simply didn't have that ability and shouldn't be offered the same opportunities. So that is the kind of system that seems to be perpetuated today, despite the fact that so many years have passed, and you would think that such an idea and an approach to education would be henceforth outdated, but it isn't. So for now, I will stop here and have you guys continue later. Remember, if you ever have any questions, please feel free to email or text me through Google Voice. Bye, guys.